you. Thank you. That's a roaring crowd. Thank you very much, Clint. Thank you all for coming out tonight. This is Astrology Night. We have it the first Wednesday of every month here at SoulFood Books in beautiful Redmond, Washington. Normally I'm joined up here by my comrade in arms, Rick Levine, but for some reason he has decided to avoid this northwestern November by lingering in tropical Bali for an extra month. So please, I ask you to send your prayers and your pity for Rick among the lotus blossoms in Bali. Before we get started tonight, I have a couple of announcements. One is that Rick and I write an annual forecast book. It's called Your Astrology Guide. This one, appropriately enough, is Your Astrology Guide 2013. It's a sun sign book. That is, it's based on the 12 signs, but it has a lot of detailed and real astrology in it. So if you're interested in it, check out your local bookstore. Check out bn.com, amazon.com. BN Barnes & Noble is the publisher. The other things I do want to share with you is my lovely camera person, who's also my wife, Denise Jower, will be performing here at Soul Food on Saturday, November 24th at 8 p.m. with her band, Double Pisces, which is actually two Pisces, each with the moon in Pisces, so they should be quadruple Pisces. That's Saturday, November 24th. One more plug. Rick Levine and I, for the past 5 years or so, have been doing an astrological retreat at Brighton Bush Hot Springs. We do it in January in the dead of winter. This year we're going to be at Brighton Bush, BREITEN Bush.com, in Brighton Bush, January 11th through the 13th. And just as Rick and I talk about the upcoming astrological month here at Soul Food every month, at Brighton Bush, what we do on a Friday night, Saturday and Sunday, in between dunks in the hot tub, is that we talk about the planetary patterns for all the year ahead, 2013, and then we go through the individual charts of each one of the attendees. There's usually 15 to 20 people, and talk about how the astrological patterns of the year are working in their lives, in their charts for the year ahead. So check out brightonbush.com. It's a great experience. It's off the grid. It's an intentional community that makes its own electricity, has lots of natural hot tubs. It's quite an experience. All right. I would like to apologize. Well, I will apologize to the audience here tonight and the home audience, because in my haste to leave my house, I forgot the appropriate connector that would hook up my laptop to the overhead projector, which we use every month here to show you the astrological charts about which Rick and I talk. Now, I have plenty of astrological excuses for not showing you these tonight. Mercury, the planet of communication, went retrograde yesterday. And we astrologers often use Mercury retrograde as a good rationalization for all of our little screw-ups. In fact, for a couple of years, I worked for Matrix Software, a major astrology software company, and we loved it when Mercury was retrograde, because customers would call up and instead of telling us that our software was broken, they were making excuses for us. They would say, Mercury's retrograde and your software isn't working, but I know that it's not your fault, and yes, we were generally able to fix them. Unfortunately, tonight, even with the help of Soul Food and their Apple parts, we were unable to fix this. So you're not going to see charts on the screen tonight. We will still, though, talk about some individual charts that you're going to have to use your imagination for later in the evening. Now, I have more excuses than just Mercury retrograde. You didn't think I just came up here with one lame excuse. I've got two more excuses. We're in Scorpio. Scorpio is a sign of mystery and secrecy, so why should I show you the charts? Use your imagination, use your creativity, dig in inside, and take a look at your soul, and there you will see engraved the planets moving over the next month, this month of November. Additionally, we have 2 eclipses this month that I'll spend some time talking about. Fortunately, I was prepared enough to print out this chart, and if on the break you want to take a look at it, please do. So, for those of you who are new here at Soul Food for Astrology Night, what Rick and I do every month is to talk about the upcoming astrological patterns for the month ahead. This is the cosmic weather. It's the general astrological conditions that affect all of us, although obviously we each have our own lives, our own stories, our own individual charts, and we'll experience these in different ways. So this is an overview. When it rains on everybody. Some people have umbrellas, some people have raincoats, some people are happy ducks walking around in the rain, but that's what we're going to talk about, the collective cosmic weather. After doing that, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to look at 3 charts from the audience. I'll look at the 3 charts. You'll have to get close to my computer to actually see them, but that's just to give you an example of what real individual astrology is about, but it's going to be done in a very condensed form, not as deep personal and private counseling, but a public demonstration of individual astrology. So let's begin and talk about the month ahead. Well, there was a lot of nervousness yesterday among the astrologically aware about the election in the United States. And the reason is that Mercury, the planet of communication, details data and information, turned retrograde yesterday. Mercury appears to turn backwards 3 times a year for about 3 weeks at a time. And when planets turn retrograde, their energies tend to be inhibited. And Mercury, the communication planet, was retrograde in the US election, presidential election, in November of 2000. Some of you may remember the controversy in the state of Florida involving hanging chads and all that that led to in the selection of G.W. Bush for his first term. Well, a lot of us in the astrological community were concerned that we would encounter similar kinds of complications yesterday. And although I'm sure with well over 90 million people casting ballots, there were problems and issues, it wasn't blatant. It wasn't obvious. It didn't appear to change the outcome. Nevertheless, we're going to have Mercury, this communication planet, continuing to move retrograde or to move backwards until the 26th of this month. Now, astrology works on lots of levels. There's the old scary level about good and bad, and on that scary level, Mercury retrograde is bad. Miscommunication, errors with technology, difficulty in travel or transportation are some of the fundamental negative ideas that people have about this phenomenon. Maybe that's going to be true. Hard to tell, but certainly from an astrological perspective, the recommendation is that you double-check data and details over the next 3 weeks, or 19 days, actually. If you send a message and you don't get a response, it's probably good email intelligence to send another message. Don't assume that the person didn't get it. Maybe it was treated like spam, maybe something happened along the way, and especially during a Mercury retrograde period, we astrologers believe there's a greater likelihood that the data, the details, and the information that Mercury represents are likely to be convoluted, misconstrued, or lost in some way. Now, I think this Mercury retrograde, although it hasn't been obvious thus far, it just began, in some ways might be even more complicated than a typical Mercury retrograde. And the reason is that it began with Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius. Now, planets represent raw energies. Mercury is the messenger. Signs tell us how they work. And Sagittarius is not a sign of details. Sagittarius is a sign of principles, of big ideas, of big possibilities, which is not really a comfortable domain for Mercury. In fact, according to traditional astrology, Mercury is at a disadvantage in Sagittarius, because the near sight vision we need for Mercury to read the pages of the book, to understand the data or details in a chart, doesn't work so well because Sagittarius is farsighted. Sagittarius is not particularly interested in what's right under our noses. It tends to be looking over the horizon. So the complications of Mercury in Sagittarius and Mercury going retrograde suggest the possibility that our minds can leap over necessary details, data, and information to jump to conclusions which may or may not be supported by facts. Mercury, while it's going retrograde, next week on the 13th of November, is going to back into Scorpio. Now, Scorpio is deeply intense, passionate, emotional, dealing with the profound exchanges we have with one another, emotionally, physically, and materially. Mercury going back into Scorpio, retrograding back into Scorpio, means that if you swallowed the resentment you felt about some deal, about some situation, about something that wasn't fair, but you weren't ready to face it, or perhaps you didn't even see it, Mercury's return to Scorpio on the 13th of this month may trigger over the subsequent 2 weeks a recollection, revenge, or a reaccounting for something in your life. Now, what's interesting in terms of the notions of what's good or bad or easy or difficult is, as we know, almost always determined by the consciousness you bring to it. In other words, if Mercury going back into Scorpio represents sort of bringing up some undigested emotional issue, some unfinished piece of business, then if you're resentful about it, if you feel victimized about it, if you go into blame mode or guilt mode, that's probably not going to be a very helpful experience. But if, on the other hand, you allow your own intensity and your own emotions to hold a place that's in proportion, that's reasonable, you can be angry, you can be upset, but it can be in a container of consciousness which then allows that upset to be expressed in a way that is constructive rather than destructive. And in fact, through this whole Mercury retrograde period, again, November 6th through November 26th, it's a wonderful period of time to go back and complete unfinished business, to tie up loose ends, because what's happening is that the planet of information is revisiting a place that it's just been. And in revisiting a place it's been, we have an opportunity to revisit and revise and review and redo. All these re-words go with Mercury retrograde. It's a do-over, and if you bring that state of mind, that it's okay to go back, and even, yes, to go back on your word. There's probably nothing stupider than saying, I've made a statement, and although conditions have changed, and though it no longer applies to my current state of mind, or our current relationship, or our current circumstances, I've got to stick to it. That's not honor. That's not commitment. That's resistance. That's unconsciousness. So giving ourselves a chance to maybe untangle some of the knots of agreement that we've made would be, I think, a very good use of this Mercury retrograde cycle. There's another reason, one that I brought up, but now let's connect it.